So just a quick announcement before we get to today's content. About 18 months ago, I set up the IM Premium service. The idea was to provide paying subscribers with additional content to the content on the main channel. However, for various reasons, it has come to the point where almost all the content I make is for the premium content subscribers, and thus the public channel is mostly dormant. A quick look at the public channel shows I made just 10 videos last year and only 2 in the last 6 months. In fact, I made a total of 22 last year when you include the premium content. So as of this month, I've decided to discontinue the premium content service. All videos from now on will be made public, but if you do support the channel via Patreon or Subscribestar, you'll get the content 48 hours in advance. That is, regardless of whether you pledge $1 a month or $10 a month. I'll post all videos on these platforms 48 hours prior to going live on the public channel. And I'll also make all the premium videos public over the course of the next couple of months. If you'd like to support the channel, check the links in the description. So Chairman Dan, the benevolent ruler of the People's Republic of Victoria, has graciously released Victorians from a statewide 5-day lockdown. You see, a few people in Melbourne stand got COVID, and so Chairman Dan told all 6.5 million people in the state that they had to watch Netflix for 5 days. I'm sure the 564 residents of Marlow in the Gippsland region felt so much safer for those measures, and after all, why wouldn't they? As the chairman himself has assured all of his Victorian comrades, Victoria has a gold standard quarantine system.
Now, this is not about boasting, so this is just a fact. If it was anything other than one of the best systems, the AMA over in WA were calling it the gold standard. They're not terms I use, but that's what they said.
Of course, he wouldn't say that, but he wants you to know that other people have said it. So let's have a little review of Australia's COVID situation as at the 19th of February. There have been nearly 29,000 cases of COVID in Australia, with more than 70% of those originating in Victoria. And of the 909 deaths Australia-wide, 90% have been in the gold standard state. Now, to be fair, the gold standard wasn't adopted until most of those fatalities had occurred. And lucky for his Victorian comrades too, because a new COVID case linked to the Holiday Inn at Melbourne Airport on February 4th exploded to a grand total of 13 by February 11th, thus leading to a 5-day lockdown of the whole state. The chairman informed us it needed to be done because the new COVID-19 strain travelled at light speed. It was moving at a velocity that has not been seen anywhere in our country over the course of these 12 months. It was something very different to what the country dealt with last year. Now, as Janet Albrechtsen noted in The Australian, the politics of fear makes no room for facts that allay fears. While someone infected with the original Wuhan strain is likely to pass the virus to 11% of their close contacts, a person with the UK variant will pass the virus on to 14.7% of their close contacts, according to Public Health England. And as health editor Natasha Robinson explained in this newspaper, Victoria's small case numbers should have been managed by testing, rigorous contact tracing, and at worst, localised proportionate suppression strategies such as those in New South Wales. Yes, remember what happened in New South Wales just before Christmas? There was an outbreak in the northern beaches of Sydney, so Gladys, the gold standard boyfriend chooser, cordoned off only the affected suburbs, approximately 250,000 residents, but the rest of Sydney remained open. By then, the cluster had grown to 68 cases, with 30 new cases recorded in the previous 24 hours, much more serious than the outbreak that precipitated the 5-day lockdown in Victoria. Patient zero of the Holiday Inn cluster was a man who, with his partner and child, had just returned from overseas. He was a chronic asthma sufferer and used a nebulizer during his isolation at the Holiday Inn. He said that he had permission to use the device, but the head of the COVID-19 quarantine Victoria, Emma Kassar, has said there's no evidence the man told her team about the nebulizer. Interestingly, Nebulizer Boy had a different take on the gold standard COVID quarantine system. He told 3AW's Neil Mitchell that the hotel quarantine system is a mess. He said you go in there and there are no warning signs, no information as you go in, no serious ventilation, no signs saying don't use a nebulizer. He says the air conditioning made them all feel ill at the Holiday Inn. Emma Kassar said that Nebulizer Boy did not declare that he had a nebulizer when he was admitted into hotel quarantine. Since the Department of Justice took over the program in June, in that first initial screening when someone comes into quarantine, they're asked about medical devices that they have. That's been the first protective strategy. I think in this instance the individual didn't recognise his nebulizer as some people would, that it was a medical device. Okay, so maybe he made a mistake, but you would have thought they'd have more warnings about this given how important it is. Starting Wednesday, a nurse will help Border Force check baggage of incoming arrivals for aerosol-generating devices. She also said returning travellers could now expect to see a lot of signage with diagrams of what different aerosol-generating devices look like, and will be asked detailed questions about their medical devices. Well, I would have thought a gold standard system would have thought of that already. Perhaps it's a feature of this particular gold standard system that it's rolled out in stages. That is, there's a screw-up, and then they scramble to fix it. But of course, this criticism of Chairman Dan and his gold standard system is just a right-wing conspiracy pushed by Sky News and other Murdoch apparatchiks, like far-right extremist Lee Sales of the ABC. Sales had the temerity to question gold standard Dan about the apparent lack of confidence in his gold standard system.
Premier, what do you say today to Victorians who, after 111 days of lockdown last year, might be asking how is it the case that their government still lacks such confidence in your hotel quarantine systems and your contact tracing that you apparently can't manage 2 to 3 cases of COVID a day in a population of about 6.3 million people?
Well, you've made a number of assertions there.
Well, they're all facts, actually.
Well, no, they're not. You've just put it to me that there's a lack of confidence. Absolutely. I'm more than confident in the team we have and in the Victorian community that they can get through this. So with the greatest of respect, you have put a number of things to me that are not accurate.
But the data, Premier, that we were just provided with showed that they were contacts of contacts. They were really well identified. And
well, not all of them, actually. Some of them have come into scope.
They've been well identified and pinned down. Your hospitals aren't in any danger of being overwhelmed. It's a small number of cases. That all suggests that your system is actually working pretty well to contain it. So why the need for lockdown?
Well, that's a very different question to the one that you asked at the beginning, where you contended that there were all sorts of confidence issues.
Well, I'm going based on that you said on the weekend that a lockdown was needed because contact tracers could not keep up with the spread of the UK variant, which would imply that you lack confidence.
No, it's not what it implies at all. That's not what it implies at all. What it implies and what it actually states is that this thing's moving really fast. That shouldn't be taken as a criticism of thousands of people who are working night and day and are pulling this up. I suppose I'll put it to you this way, Lee, if you're putting it to me that I ought to ignore the advice that's provided to me by the Chief Health Officer, well, I will not do that.
So are you going to put the state into a 5-day lockdown every time you have 2 or 3 new cases a day?
We'll look at every positive case on its merits, but we would always work as hard as we possibly can to avoid having any statewide measures, any extra rules. But look,
that's pretty hard news for Victorians to take, that 2 to 3 cases a day, the system may not be able to handle it, and that's on the table, that you might have a 5-day lockdown every time you have 2 or 3 cases.
I think it's important to acknowledge that when you use terms like the system may not be able to handle it, this is not the 2020 virus. This is a very different virus, and if you want to look at systems that can't handle things, well, have a look at Europe. Have a look at so many parts of the world. They're dealing with what happens when this UK strain runs wild. There's just no pulling it up. And particularly when you get so close, and we've seen some very encouraging announcements overnight from the Commonwealth Government in relation to the vaccine rollout. And we look forward to playing our part in that. However we can help, we're there to do the very best we possibly can. When you're so close to having frontline workers and particularly vulnerable Victorians getting that jab, we've got to hold these settings. We've got to protect what we've built, and that's exactly what we've done.
If snap lockdowns are going to continue to be a tool or an option for a small number of cases, how can Victorian businesses make any regular planning, let alone investment planning?
Well, again, I'm not accepting, and I think it's just wrong to say that they're a tool for a small number of cases as such.
You use the term small number of cases before yourself.
But they're a tool, yeah, and also I think about 14 times made the point, Lee, that every case on its merits.
The entire exchange goes for about 5 minutes. You can find the link in the comments. So there you go. Victorians may be put under lockdown for 5 days or more because of a couple of cases, even if the tracking and tracing is impeccable. Why? Because this new strain is so virulent, which, as we've seen before, is a gross exaggeration. And what about businesses, for example, restaurants that order thousands of dollars worth of fresh food? What do? How can they plan ahead when Chairman Dan might shut them down at any moment? But the politics of fear seem to be working. According to a Roy Morgan poll, 60% of Victorians want the state of emergency to continue until the end of the year. And that view is the same regardless of whether you live in Melbourne or the regions. As I'm recording this on Sunday, February 21st, the first Australian has received the vaccine. In my humble opinion, we should be making noises about getting back to normal. Sure, keep your social distancing measures in place for now and protect the vulnerable, but we should be opening up for business. I realise that's a minority view. I guess I just don't get it. But then I've watched with amazement at what I believe to be a massive overreaction since at least April, May of last year, when we knew the virus wasn't as bad as we first thought. Does anyone remember that quaint little phrase, flattening the curve? Oh well, down the memory hole it goes. I'll leave you with this from Adam Crichton in the Weekend Australian. I think it's a good summary of the ongoing madness. Australia and New Zealand have incurred costs equivalent to a world war, and more than any other nation has, fighting a pandemic that has killed not even 1,000 people, with a median age in the mid-80s between them. And this is widely seen as brilliant. Having insisted early last year that lockdowns were necessary to flatten the curve, rolling capital city snap lockdowns of millions of people have become the norm, at extraordinary economic, psychological and social cost, without a single person in ICU across either country. Our leaders should level with voters that we can't remain an open liberal society without incurring further deaths and cases from COVID-19. Let vulnerable groups be vaccinated and let everyone else get on with their life. As usual, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'll see you next time.